It started with the rain. Not the kind that pours all at once and screams for attention, but the slow, steady kind. The kind that taps gently on windows like it's asking to be let in. The kind that makes the world feel quieter and smaller. He was driving me home. That's all it was supposed to be. Favor, nothing more. I'd had too much wine, and he was the one who always looked out for me, even when he shouldn't have to. The ride was mostly silent. Just the sound of the rain, the occasional click of the turn signal, and his breath. Calm. Even. Except when he thought I wasn't looking, and it hitched just slightly. I should have thanked him when we pulled into my driveway. I should have opened the door, said goodnight, walked up the steps like nothing was unraveling between us. But I didn't, because he didn't unlock the doors. And I didn't ask why. We just sat there. The car still running. The wipers swiping across the windshield like they were trying to erase the moment. But it was already too late. My coat was unbuttoned. His hand gripped the steering wheel a little too tightly. And I could feel it, thick in the air between us, this something we'd never talked about. I turned to him slowly, and he was already looking at me. Eyes darker than usual. Mouth parted like he wanted to say something. Or do something. But he didn't move. Neither did I. Not yet. Because in that small humming car, with the rain kissing the windows and the city lights blurring into soft golds and blues, we both knew. Something had shifted. We weren't just friends anymore. And I wasn't getting out of that car. I don't know how long we sat there. Maybe 2 minutes. Maybe 20. Time behaves differently when you're holding your breath. The rain softened, just enough that you could hear the hush of our breathing. That sound, his breath and mine slightly uneven, too loud in the quiet, filled every inch of the car. I should go, I whispered. But I didn't reach for the door. He didn't answer right away. His fingers drummed once against the steering wheel, then stilled. Yeah, he said softly. You should. But he still didn't unlock the doors. I turned my head toward the window, but I didn't see the street. I saw my own reflection, dim and uncertain, and his right beside mine. So close. We'd been close before. Long hugs. Inside jokes. Accidental touches that lasted one heartbeat too long. But there was always a line. We danced around it like it was sacred. But tonight that line was thinner. I can't stop thinking about you, he said suddenly, like it had been tearing through him for hours. Maybe days. Maybe longer. My heart kicked. I didn't answer. I just looked down at my hands in my lap, shaking slightly. He noticed. Of course he did. He always noticed. You don't have to say anything, he added, his voice a little lower now. I couldn't drive away again without telling you. Again. So this wasn't the first time he'd felt it. I turned toward him finally. Slowly. Our eyes locked. And it was like the whole car tilted toward him. Everything in me wanted to move. To close that tiny space between us that now felt unbearable. But I didn't. Because I needed to be sure he wasn't just saying it. So I asked quietly, what happens if I don't get out of the car? He looked at me like he already knew I wasn't going to. And his voice, steady sure, made my breath catch. Then I'll finally stop pretending I don't want to touch you. And just like that, the rain wasn't the only thing trembling. The air inside that car changed. It got heavier, but not in a way that smothered. It pressed against my skin like heat from a flame I hadn't realized I was standing too close to. He didn't reach for me. Not yet. He just looked at me like I was something he wasn't sure he was allowed to want. But couldn't stop needing. I felt my chest rise slowly, too slowly, and I swear I could feel his gaze follow the movement. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was electric. Like the pause between a lightning flash and the rumble that follows. I don't want to be careful with you tonight, he said quietly, his voice rough at the edges. I've been careful too long. His words hit somewhere low in my stomach, soft, warm, dangerous. I didn't know what to say. I think part of me was still trying to convince myself this wasn't happening. That I wasn't sitting in his car, skin flushed, pulse stuttering, about to make a choice I couldn't take back. But the truth was, I didn't want to take it back. So I shifted slightly in my seat, turning to face him fully. My knee brushed his just lightly, but it was enough. His breath caught. His hand dropped from the steering wheel. And for one suspended second we both just waited. I could hear the rain slowing outside. the soft rhythm fading into a hush, like even the storm was holding its breath for us. And then, his fingers reached for mine. Not forcefully, not with certainty, but gently, tentatively, like he was afraid I might pull away. I didn't. His touch was warm, steady, and when our fingers finally laced together, I felt a shiver run up my spine so sudden, I had to close my eyes. I've imagined this, he whispered. So many times. But not like this. Not while you're right here. I opened my eyes slowly, and he was already looking at me again. Closer this time, his hand still in mine. His other resting now between us, palm up, like he was offering more than just touch. It was an invitation, and I wasn't saying no. Not tonight. When I leaned in, it wasn't some big cinematic kiss. It was slower than that. More hesitant. More real. Our foreheads touched first. Just barely. Skin to skin like two magnets finally giving up the fight. And that tiny point of contact, it undid me. I didn't realize how much I was shaking until he brought his hand up to the side of my face. Not to pull me closer, but just to hold me steady. To anchor me. My eyes were still closed, and I could feel his breath mixing with mine. It was warm. A little uneven. His thumb brushed my cheek. Not possessive. Not urgent. Just reverent. Like he was memorizing me 1 inch at a time. I keep thinking I'm dreaming, he whispered. You're not, I breathed. He smiled, just barely, and then tilted his head, brushing his nose against mine. A tiny movement. A test. A question. I answered by moving 1/2 inch closer. Our lips didn't meet fully. Not at first. They just grazed. Like a secret being shared too softly to be spoken. The softness of that first touch was almost unbearable. He pulled back a little like he was afraid he'd gone too far. But I followed. This time I kissed him. And God, the way he melted into me. The way his hand slipped into my hair like he'd been waiting years to do it. The way the space between us disappeared like it had never really belonged there. I wasn't thinking anymore. I wasn't analyzing. I was feeling. And every part of me was screaming yes. Yes to his hands, warm and shaking slightly as they found my waist. Yes to the breathless way he whispered my name against my mouth like a vow. Yes to the car windows fogging around us. Yes to everything that had been buried for so long it was starting to ache. When we finally broke apart, just enough to breathe, he didn't let me go. And I didn't want him to. I've wanted this, I said, my voice barely holding together. But I was scared it would ruin everything. He rested his forehead against mine again. It already ruined me, he murmured. The wanting. And then he kissed me again. Slower this time. But deeper. Like he knew we'd just crossed a line we'd never come back from. He tasted like heat. Like secrets. Like everything I'd been denying myself. And the worst part, or maybe the best, was how familiar it felt. Like we'd done this 100 times in dreams we never admitted to. His lips moved with a kind of hunger that didn't feel rushed. It felt earned. A slow, building ache that had finally found its place to land. My hands had a mind of their own. One slid up his chest. Feeling the tension there, the way he held his breath every time I touched him like it might undo him completely. The other found its way to the back of his neck, fingers curling into the softness of his hair. He made a sound in his throat then, low, almost like a growl held back, and my whole body reacted. Say my name, he whispered, lips brushing mine. I didn't say it at first. I just looked at him, memorized the way his eyes looked in the dim light. Full of something raw, something unguarded. So I said it, softly, and the way his eyes closed for a second, just hearing it, just feeling the sound of his name in my breath, made me feel like I'd touched something inside him no one else had. He leaned his forehead into mine again like he needed the contact. Like without it he might come apart. This isn't just tonight, he murmured. Don't let it be just tonight. I wasn't sure if it was a question or a plea, but I nodded anyway, because I didn't want this to vanish with the rain. My coat had slipped open at some point. His hands, still hesitant, still asking even when they didn't speak, found their way to my waist again, fingertips sliding along the fabric like they were afraid of waking me. I wasn't asleep, but it did feel like dreaming, because I never thought he'd look at me this way. I never thought he'd need me this way. And suddenly, the confined space of the car didn't feel small. It felt like the only place in the world where I existed. With him. By now, the windows were fully fogged. Blurry shapes of streetlights pulsed faintly through the misted glass, casting soft glows across his skin, gold, then blue, then shadow. I'd never seen him look like this. Unmasked. Unfiltered. His fingers had moved under the hem of my coat now, resting just above my hip, skin against skin. And I swear I could feel the pulse in his fingertips, quick and deep, like his heart had forgotten how to hide. Every movement felt fragile, like if we moved too fast it would all crack and fall apart. But neither of us wanted slow anymore. Not after years of pretending. "Come here," he said, but I was already moving. Already folding into him like I'd been doing it in my head for years. His arms wrapped around me, tight and warm and trembling just enough for me to feel it. I curled into his lap, straddling him carefully, knees pressed into the seat. The car groaned slightly under the shift, a reminder that the world outside still existed. But it felt far away. Right now there was only breath. Only hands. Only the quiet rasp of his voice in my ear. "You have no idea what you do to me." I rested my forehead on his collarbone. "I think I do now," I whispered. His lips brushed against my neck. Barely there. But it felt like fire. And I felt something else too. The restraint. The tension in his body. Not from hesitation but from the storm he was holding back. Like touching me meant everything, but not ruining me meant more. That's what made it impossible to stop. The fact that he could, but didn't. The fact that he held me like I was sacred, even in the middle of his undoing. I pressed closer, and his hand slid up my back under my sweater, finding the heat of my spine. We were shaking now. Both of us. But it wasn't fear. It was the weight of everything we'd never said, crashing all at once, in a kiss that tasted like finally. And outside, the rain began to fall again. Not soft this time. It poured. The sound of rain was deafening now. It pounded the roof like a drum, like a warning, like a promise. And beneath it, only us. Our breath. Our bodies pressed too close to pretend anymore. He held me like a secret he'd kept for too long. Not possessive but deliberate. Like every inch of me was something he needed to remember in case this was the only night we ever got. His mouth traced a line along my shoulder where my sweater had slipped. I gasped. Not loudly. Just enough for him to know I wasn't okay. Not in the way that meant fear, but in the way that meant I was falling. Fast. I felt his hand still for a moment. Like he was giving me time to stop it. To run. To open the door and walk away. But I didn't move. Because there was no part of me, not one, that wanted to leave that car. "I don't know where this goes," I whispered, my forehead against his. "But I know I don't want to go back to pretending." He exhaled slowly, his lips brushing mine again. "Then don't," he said. "Stay here. With me." And I did. Not just physically. I mean all of me. I let myself feel it. The way his touch made me forget what time was. The way he explored me like I was something precious, not a mistake. The way our hearts matched pace. Fast, uneven. Then suddenly in rhythm. Like two songs learning how to become one. The windows were dripping now. Our breaths fogging the space around us. Clothes not removed but shifted. Just enough for skin to find skin. My hand pressed over his heart. His fingers tangled in my hair. It was messy, imperfect, tangled with too many emotions, but it was real. We didn't speak much. There weren't words big enough. Just gasps. Murmurs. That sound he made when I kissed just below his jaw. The one that told me I'd found the place where he stopped thinking. And when he pulled me tighter, like he didn't want even air between us, I knew. This wasn't lust. This was something else. Something that had been waiting for the right moment to breathe. When it was over, or rather when the silence returned, we stayed tangled together. Not because we didn't know what to say. But because we did. And it felt too big to speak out loud. The rain had softened again. The storm outside easing just as the one inside us quieted into something warm and fragile. He didn't let go. Not even a little. One hand stayed on my back, the other threaded through my hair. And I just listened to the steady beat of his heart beneath my cheek. For a long time we didn't look at each other. Not fully. Not because of regret, there wasn't any. But because eye contact would have made it real. It was real. Eventually, I pulled back just enough to see his face. His hair was messy, his jaw tense, but his eyes looked at me like I was something holy. "You okay?" he asked softly, brushing his thumb along my temple. I nodded, then nodded again just to make sure he knew. "More than okay." He smiled, tired but honest. And for a second it felt like we'd stepped out of time. Like the world outside that fogged-up windshield didn't exist. Eventually he reached past me and turned the key. The engine stopped. The car went quiet. And still we didn't move. Because stepping out meant returning to reality. To questions. Complications. Everything we hadn't figured out. But as I looked at him, sitting there watching me like I might disappear, I knew one thing for sure. Whatever this was, it wasn't going away. I finally reached for the door. Not to leave. Just to crack it open. Let the cold air in. Let the night settle around us like a blanket we weren't quite ready to fold. And then before I stepped out, he said, "Don't forget how this felt." I turned back to him. I couldn't if I tried. And as I walked up my steps, heart still racing, body still trembling with everything we didn't say, I looked back. He was still there. Watching. Waiting. Like the car still held a piece of me he wasn't ready to let go. And maybe I hadn't left it all behind. Maybe part of me was still sitting beside him, where the heat hadn't faded yet, where the storm first touched skin, where I finally let myself say yes. And the truth is, I never really got out of that car. Not the part of me that knew what it meant to be wanted, held not claimed, seen not consumed, loved maybe, in a way that still haunts me when it rains.